Good morning, everybody. Welcome you to the 9th edition of the Business IT Conclave. This year's theme is Fintech Riding on Blockchain. We would request our dignitaries of the inaugural session to please come and take their seats on the dais. We have with us Sri Debasheshan, Additional Chief Secretary, Department of IT and E-Government of West Bengal, and Chairman HITCO. Mr. Bhaskar Pramanik, former Chairman, Microsoft India, and member of the Board of State Bank of India. We'd also request Mr. Arnab Basu, Chairperson, IT Committee, the Bengal Chamber, Mr. C.S. Ghosh, President, the Bengal Chamber, Mr. Ambarish Dasgupta, former President, the Bengal Chamber, Mr. Debashish Basu, Co-Chairperson of the IT Committee of the Bengal Chamber, and Mr. Tamal Bantopadhyay, who's advisor to the Bandhan Bank and consulting editor Mint, who will be moderating the session. We would request all of you to please come and take your seats on the dais. I'd request Mr. Tamal Bantopadhyay to please take the session forward.
Good morning and very warm welcome to this 9th edition Bengal Chambers Fintech Riding on Blockchain. As you have seen, this is not a panel discussion. Each of these gentlemen, they don't need any introduction. They will have their inaugural speeches. This is the inaugural session. So I am just a sort of sutradhar, whatever you call it. Just a couple of minutes I will introduce the subject and then we'll go one by one. Essentially, for many of us, blockchain, which is about 10-year-old now, it brings our mind to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, etc., etc. So it's a new form. It's a very radical decentralization of technology. It's a record keeper and educator, which does not depend on any third party or outside institution. So in that sense, this is a sort of new governance. It's actually a form of new governance, and which is why it's also radical. And we are almost seeing this blockchain is creating a parallel economy and parallel legal system. I'll just give you 2-3 facts what's happening globally for blockchain, and then we will hear through the session what's happening in India. Now, the most responsible study, if I'm not mistaken, is a McKinsey study, talks about the blockchain has been growing or will grow by 2021, which is 4 years down the line, at a CAGR of 61.5%. And big techies across the world, Microsoft, IBM, Accenture, they are all going, running to embrace blockchain. And what's happening? I'm just giving you this week's or this fortnight's development. Microsoft has joined an alliance which is called ID 2020. It's a global partnership creating an open source blockchain based digital identity system in the US. It will allow access to sensitive online information via an encrypted data hub. It has also entered into a deal with the Israel's largest bank. It's called Bank Hapolim. It's creating digital bank guarantee based on blockchain. You know what happened today in the PNB scam, the LOI scam, and there in US, Microsoft is now tied up with Israel's biggest bank to create digital bank guarantee based on blockchain. Now, what is IBM doing? IBM has partnered with Stellar and Clipix Group to help financial institutions South Pacific to improve the process of universal cross-border payments by reducing the settlement time and cost. It has also launched its first commercial blockchain deployment for private equity market in collaboration with Northern Trust. And finally, just hold your breath, IBM just announced world's smallest computer based on blockchain technology, and the size of the computer, guess, it will be smaller than a grain of salt. Finally, Accenture, the global consulting and tech firm, it has collaborated with Walt Disney Studios. For what? To purchase virtual reality, machine learning and blockchain. So this is what across the world happening in the blockchain area. And it's very, very interesting. I think it's a very progressive on part of Bengal Chamber. Thank you, President. Mr. You were the president of this year, Mr. Ghosh, to have this subject and looking forward. So here I end, and so my job will be just to ask one after another to have their speeches, and probably in between I'll just put in some salt and pepper, little factoids, which will help you to appreciate how the world around us is changing, how technology changing is our life. So the welcome address by Mr. Arnab Basu, Chairperson, IT Committee of Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Mr. Basu, all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Bandyopadhyay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As I stand here on the 9th edition of the Business IT Conclave, it really gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you. We have a lot of dignitaries on the stage. A special welcome to Mr. Debashish Sen, Additional Chief Secretary, IT and Electronics, Government of West Bengal. Mr. Bhaskar Pramanik, who has very kindly agreed to give us the keynote speech today. Mr. Das Gupta, past President of the Chamber. We also have on stage Mr. Ghosh, the current President. It's our privilege to have all of you today here. As many of you would know, I'm not a blockchain expert, neither am I a fintech expert. So my welcome address is not to give you a lot of technical details around either of those. But I think the way we conceived this, when we thought of this from the IT committee, this is our signature event for the year. The chamber has always focused on, being a bridge between technology users and developers and how that is being consumed by the business. And when we thought of this year's topic, one of the thoughts was that should we focus on blockchain, but then it becomes very technical, very dry in some ways. Should we focus on fintech as an ecosystem? Again, there's been a lot of programs on fintech, not so much in this part of the country. But we felt that, why don't we bring it together? Because if you look at many of the fintechs today and what they're trying to do, most of them, in some way or the other, is riding on what blockchain allows them to do. And to a large extent, if you look at many of the fintechs who are currently collaborating with large financial institutions in the country, or even developing products for many of the foreign banks and foreign institutions, many of them have been, working on this concept, working and building their products, their platforms on this concept. And hence we thought that let's work on fintech riding on blockchain as a key theme for our discourse today. We are very honored that many learned speakers have agreed to come here today, most of them from outside Kolkata. We have to change that next time. But we do have a very learned speaker list today for all of you. When I look at what blockchain has been doing over the years, it's of course still in its infancy. I wouldn't say that it has become as mature as we would, all be thinking it is. But even then, we already find a lot of organizations trying out different kinds of use cases on blockchain, whether it is around, insurance sector, insurance claims, whether it is around digital payments, whether it is around land records, health records, whether it is around, reducing fraud. All of these are being, I would say, enabled by this decentralized ledger system. And I think if you look at today's India, it requires technology to make that leap. It requires technology to, make us have that kind of, I wouldn't say, exponential growth, but definitely I would say breakout growth, and technology can do that. We were today discussing, how in many businesses, high touch is now being enabled by high tech, and we'll hear about that from some of the esteemed speakers. How customer loyalty is being enabled by technology, how fraud is being, I wouldn't say wiped out, but being reduced by using technology. And whenever you have use cases where you need, instant, I would say, reconciliation, you have a high number of transactions, you have trust as something which is very integral, and you also have something where, transactions are interacting with each other. One transaction is affecting how the next transaction is happening. You would find a lot of use cases coming in blockchain. And I think it's very heartening that even from this part of the country, we have a lot of, tech startups working on financial services as a sector. They're working on financial services solutions, which are being taken up by many of the large banks, which are being taken up by many new banks, because it gives them the ability to, have a level playing field with some of the more entrenched players in the industry. And I think it's something which we as a, industry academia, developer forum, we feel that, it's something which would make inroads in our lives. In today's life, I think we don't have technology as something which we can live without. And I think in some ways technology has become so integral to our life, we don't even realize that we are using technology. So with that, I would probably, pause and again welcome to all the esteemed speakers. On behalf of the Chamber and on behalf of the IT Committee, it gives us great pleasure to have all of you here. And when we look at, different people have different quotes, but one quote from William Mugair, who is the author of the Business Blockchain, which stuck with me was, how do you create value? What he says is, you create value by running services on blockchain. And that's the world which we are going towards. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I look forward to a brilliant day of discourse. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Basu. The next speaker is a very interesting person Mr. Chandrasekhar Ghosh is the founder, chairman and managing director of Bandhan Bank. You have what, 11.5 million customers now? Yes? So, 13 million. 13 million, so 1.3 crore. 1.3 crore customers. So it will be very interesting to hear Mr. Ghosh how he uses technology, because the kind of business you do is essentially business of connectivity. Right, your people meet your customer at least once a week, and which is the key to the quality of assets. So we'll hear him how actually he, he mixes the two, the human touch connectivity as well as how does he embrace technology. Before that, I'll just give you one interesting fact. Now, where does India stand when it comes to artificial intelligence or use of robotics, industrial robot? Now, what are industrial robots? Industrial robots are automatically controlled, reprogrammable, multi-purpose machine. In this century, that is between 2001 and 2018, there are 200 times rise in the use of industrial robots in India, particularly in the automobile industry. Still, the density of robots in Indian industry is the lowest among all developed market. This is a study which just came out last week, study by Center for Development Studies, CDS in Thiruvananthapuram. What he says, number of robots deployed by Indian firms has risen 200-fold since 2002. In 2006, now it is in India, there is 16,026 industrial robots, which is 0.1% of the workforce. In other words, in 2000, per 10,000 workers, there was less than one robot. Now in 2017, per 10,000 worker, there is almost 10 industrial robots working, mostly in the auto sector. Over to you, Mr. Ghosh.
Good morning to all of you. Thank you, Sri Devashish Sen sir, for your very valuable time given to this new technology issue to discuss in this conference. Thank you, Bhaskar Pramanik sir, and Ambarish Dasgupta, Arnab Basu, and Devashish Basu, who are dignitaries in this dais, all the delegates in the room, and media. Thank you to all of you on that. Tamalda asked this one question, but if I go to answer that question, maybe I would not like to touch in the blockchain matter on that. But I would like to touch both on that. My experience in bank, it is fully IT based banking services as of now, what I learned on that. When I first decided to convert from my NBFC to bank, then all the requirement has come from the bankers who are experienced in the bank, who are recruited from the different bank to Bandhan Bank, and then discussed about this and say that there is a need of one core banking solution called CBS, and another 32 different types of software linked with them to run the bank. I done it before starting the bank. But surprisingly, I saw that every month I am purchasing 2 new softwares. And every one has a purpose. And how it is changing the world and need. And automatically, whatever they are given the logic, I cannot say no. Because this is a very big area. I have not that knowledge to rationalize, justify, and talk with these IT people and say that no, this one I will not take. Because all of us in the banking industry, we are trying to first reserve the customer's comfort, customer satisfaction. Customers' data should be like to preserve such a way where there is no question will become on that. So something we are looking on that, the many things is a very frequently changing on that. And so much frequent, and then we select, purchase and link with the CBS, it is also taking good time on that. But I feel that the running in future of any bank, and it's a very, very tough call that how much they are spent for IT, how much is expertise is required to put up on that in IT. I not know that the blockchain is again coming on that, the block hard or blockchain. So block hard always we are at the fear, no? Hard block, so that will go to the doctors. But this blockchain not like that. We will be like to feel that we have not need to go to doctor, but we are automatically like to solve our problem. So whatever the small points I know about the blockchain, very few of the experience, but not in a practical, like to talk about it, and I learn from the different people I like to mention in here. But I will be like to honor and listen from all of you who are expert in this the platform, and how we can be like to use and give the benefit to the bank and my customers on that. Of course, our customer number is a big, so that I hope that this blockchain can be help us to more to give the very comfort service to the customer. Blockchain is defined as a digitized and a decentralized ledger. So that it is very, I feel that the simple way I like to talk on that, I feel it is good. But India fintech ecosystem was evolved by startups and offering digital mobile charges and introducing digital wallet, which are now being used for various other commercial activities. If we see that now, it is very related to on that today news, the Flipkart and Walmart come together. How the e-commerce and wallet or mobile banking all are used in that way to do the future business on that. The fact that these new offerings have strongly impacted consumer behavior has not only attracted attention from the more technology heavy individuals, but also a lot of investments. Quite interestingly, India currently has over 600 fintech startups in the space of lending, payments, insurtech, blockchain, and regtech. So it's a market is a big. So we are also, India as a big country, we are also taking that opportunities, how it can be, this is the 600 fintech and startup organization can be contribute on that. This number is expected to grow further with initiatives such as focused accelerated programs by local and regional government, banks, and funding support by the leading corporates and VCs. The Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry has always recognized the fact that in the new environment of the society, industry, and business, the need for corporates to internalize and demonstrate their responsibilities to the society in which they operate is no longer a matter of debate. Since most citizens are interested in the understanding of the underlying, that is blockchain technology, and how it can be impact the average consumer. The Bengal Chamber would like to take this opportunity to discuss about how the fintech industry can offer several prospects with the help of blockchain technology. Blockchain, it is not only the financial players in the industry, that is also, we believe on that, exploring blockchain by the non-financial industry also. Like that is in telecom industry, healthcare, travel, retail, and the public sector industry also can be used the blockchain. The key focus of these industries is to incorporate the primary features of blockchains such as decentralize the data storage and data into their system. For example, blockchain-based patient record management will assist several healthcare companies to secure medical records, monitors the pharma supply chain. All things considered, as a decentralized platform for innovation, blockchain technology over time will revolutionary virtually every industry. For now, the financial services industry may be one of the fastest to be impacted by the widened adoption of this technology in India. However, I assure you, this development is not only limited to the respective industry, but also has the ability to support several prospects for our non-financial services industry. I wish the success for today, but the new technology discussion with the help of all of the experts in here. So thank you to all of on that.
Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. Now, the special address by Mr. Debashish Sen, IAS. There's a long descriptor. Who is he? What is he? Everybody knows about him, so I don't want to get into that. But what I have seen him in a very limited way, I have on a couple of occasions, this gentleman, he is not a typical bureaucrat. Actually, all the things which is associated with bureaucracy, red tapeism and all, I think he is far away from that. And what I have seen him once in Bombay and once in Kolkata, so extremely committed to move ahead, create industrial, create an environment to encourage industry, create jobs, so on and so forth. So I think nobody can be a better person than Mr. Sen to address how we embrace technology and help it. And before that, Mr. Sen, with your permission, just one fear I want to allay, because there's always a fascination and fear about technology and blockchain, how it kills employment opportunities and all. So there are two things this again, it's a very fresh. I actually did a lot of homework because I don't understand technology. So I did a lot of homework. It's a Barclays report, came out again last week. It's called Robots at the Gate, which says that all of us feel that employment opportunities will go down if the blockchain and other technologies come. But what it says is this, as of January 2018, US unemployment is 4.1%, Japan 1.4%, Germany 3.6%, and UK 4.3%. These are all lowest ever unemployment rate, actually, so that most people are employed at all these advanced economies at this point of time. So technology and blockchain, which is 10-year-old, has not taken anybody else's job. Other interesting facts, again from these Barclays studies, if you think that technology alone can improve your productivity, think again. It says machine learning, robotics, blockchain, etc., believed to be boosting productivity and growth, but not. See, between 2005 and 15, US productivity has grown at 1.3%, but between 1995 and 2004, it had grown at 2.8%. So growth actually has come down. Similarly, OECD countries right now is growing productivity at 1%, but earlier it was 2.5%. Sir, all yours.
Good morning, everybody. As Tomalda has been known in the media circles for a long time, and we met him at Taj Gateway Hotel in Mumbai. He was editor Mint. You still are? Consulting editor. And he gave us, Dr. Mitra was supposed to come today. We were trying to project the financial hub in Mumbai. And it was there that he told us some very good tips on how to communicate with the rest of India. Thank you very much for Tamalda for the opening remarks. And just one request, if I exceed my time, please bang the table. President, Mr. Ghosh, Mr. Pramanik, and Mr. Dashgupta, everybody on the dais, and thank you very much for giving this opportunity. From the department, just last month, Department of IT and E, we had conducted a day-long workshop on blockchain. So therefore, it was very deeply deliberated what is the future and what we need to do. We are very convinced from the government that we have to lay emphasis on emerging technologies like blockchain. Since in this room, I assume that a very informed audience is there, I will therefore not beat about the bush and say, certainly blockchain has gained its eminence from cryptocurrencies, bitcoins and the like. But cryptocurrencies are not valid in India. If there are any legal persons, they will immediately contradict me. Sir, please show me a legislation that bans cryptocurrency. But for all practical purposes, we know that the Reserve Bank has said that within 3 months, all banks virtually have to stop trading or exchanging with cryptocurrencies, and therefore that is the death knell for cryptocurrencies in India. But is it so? I say it is not so. Because number one, of course, The whole world is integrated. I mean, there's no point saying that the boundary of India ends here. For blockchain and Bitcoin, this is the end, and then somebody else takes up. The ambassador of Estonia was here a few days ago, and he met me and he said how using blockchain they are providing e-residencies, citizenship over the digital. The world is digital. It's a cliche now. We all know. There's no point, therefore, saying that it's banned in India, therefore you don't need to learn blockchain or cryptocurrencies, number one. Number two, last week we were having a very different kind of a seminar called by the Society of the Child Protection Rights. The Honorable Chairperson, Ms. Ananna Chatterjee was there. And the topic was, how can technology be used to stop child pornography and child abuse? And one of the ways in which the International Justice Company said was that you track a criminal who is doing such sexual abuses on young children is to track where money is flowing. Among other things, you have to communicate, you have to get a feedback, and you have to track money flows if you really want to be serious in stopping these ills from the society in the world. Do you think every such criminal, I will say use the word criminal, is using legitimate dollar fiat currency to do that? A large portion of this is happening in cryptocurrencies. So if you want to stop, if you want to fight the crimes against humanity by these criminals who will not stop at your diktat of using only very freshly printed orange 200 rupee notes, we have to learn and stop it. And therefore I say, let there be no fallout, let there be no lack of faith in blockchain and the need to study for it. Mr. Diptiman Dasgupta is here. Blockchain believers. He has created a Facebook network, and officially Department of IT and E, perhaps for the first time in the history of India, had collaborated officially in the workshop on blockchain. He will speak. I've seen just in the schedule. So he's a believer in blockchain, and there are thousands like him who have already come together. Day before yesterday, and yesterday's paper carried one great thing about blockchain, that Facebook has created a new division on blockchain. And people are wondering, they have not said why. People are wondering why the head of the Facebook Messenger has been shifted to the blockchain unit. And it goes on to say that the world is very sharply divided, the technology world is very sharply divided into those who believe, Diptiman being in that group, and those who do not. But can you afford to neglect it? You have to believe it, you have to nurture it, because if the next revolution is coming, as blockchain believers believe, that the internet, the way it transforms society, blockchain is going to transform society. So if you are not ready, somebody sitting in China, somebody sitting in Hong Kong, somebody sitting in some other company is going to overtake you. You can't afford to lose sight of blockchain, cryptocurrency, and everything that comes with it, and therefore fintech. And with these things, let us say, what is happening already. After the workshop that we had last month, I have to narrate this very personal experience. I don't know if some of them are here today. A group of chartered accountants came and met me. And they said, "Sir, we didn't know that this technology was there. We have been doing some studies after this. Your workshop has also brought this to the light. And we have all, there were 5 of them, including one technology person, we have left our jobs. And we have founded this blockchain-based fintech company. And what are you doing?" I asked. And they said that cross-border, Bangladesh and India, a lot of trade happens, all of us know. Ilish comes from Bangladesh and rice goes to Bangladesh. So every time there is a cross-border settlement of accounts, which is very, very cumbrous. Letter of credits, letter regulatory, and all those stuff. I don't want to go into this. And they said, if we could have a blockchain-based smart contract system so that the accounts would be settled in the Indian side among the traders, export and import, and Bangladesh side, export and import, and that is what they are working on. I think it's a great example of how smart contracts can ease using blockchain in cross-border trades like this. So this is the way to go ahead. Global trade, fintech, blockchain is most appropriate in these areas. And therefore, I would say that there is a great need to build up skill on this. The recent draft National Telecom Policy, which was just announced last week, it says that Propel India is one of the keystones of the telecom policy. And it says that emerging next generation technology should be encouraged, and blockchain and fintech and AI and robotics, which Mr. Tamalda has been telling about, these are all part of it. We have to know this. And the way to know this, one great example to move forward, and what we are doing also, is to encourage startups in this respect. Startups are a great way, not because they do great business, but they can get talents and skills in a short form by the millennials, by the young group. And we must see not what they are really earning or the earning capability, but because they have been able to cull out the talent pool in the society, in the environment. So what US big silicon companies are doing? US big silicon companies are constantly on the lookout for relevant, if it's AI, if it's machine learning, it's machine learning, if it's fintech, if it's blockchain, it's blockchain, and who are doing good in startups, and eats them up. Like today, what the chairman, Mr. Ghosh, told, Flipkart and Walmart are getting together, they're getting eaten up. So all startups, because they have the talent, this is the main point. How many people know how to do asymmetric cryptology that is essential for blockchain propagation? Very few, let me say. So therefore, if there is a startup who are confident in doing blockchain, then they will be taken up by people globally, because there is such a dearth of skilling. And therefore, it is very important to look at and encourage startups. This is a policy that the government of West Bengal is taking, and one of the ways in which we can encourage is to create hackathons. Last year's hackathon, we had certain topics, and one of the topic was fintech. It's another matter that nobody really reached the top mark. I mean, they couldn't be awarded. It was not very, the jury did not consider them to be good enough, but that's not the point. We want people to think of how to use blockchains in fintechs and other emerging technologies. And this year's hackathon, we are tying up with the National Payment Corporation of India, which is having an all-India hackathon contest on fintech, and we are tying up our own Bengalathon with them. The only objective is to encourage people to come in. You'll get a prize money, you'll get a recognition, you'll get a prize and a certificate from a minister. Okay, very good. But the real point is, one person or one group is getting, but thousands are thinking and trying for it. And that is how we create a pool of talent, a pool of believers, a pool of people who can do something that can change the society. So encouraging startups and talent for Propel India, for fintech, for smart contracts, for across the border trade, all these, and for stopping crime. Or for all these, we need to encourage fintech and blockchains. In Bengal, in Kolkata too, we are having a center. In the year 2012, Honorable Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, she had just assumed office a year back, and she inaugurated the financial hub in Rajarhat, New Town. And today, there are 23 financial institutions, public sector and private sector, Bandhan Bank included, sir, if you remember. So they have taken a plot, it's coming up slowly. And recently, we have taken a decision that a part of that would be dedicated to fintech. So if we want to build up a fintech society, we are having a cluster approach in Rajarhat New Town, in financial hub, where already 23 banks and insurance companies are working, where there are lots of talent. You will see that Amazon today, Google today is placing their future openings in places where there are good universities. Because you need talent, you need those professors who won't come up. Okay, 2 minutes, right. So therefore, in the FinTech Hub, we have the second campus of President's University, Alia University, Amity University, St. Xavier's University, and not very far in Katakol is the ISI, the Indian Statistical Institute, who already have a center of excellence on cryptology and encryption, which is the base of blockchain. So we are very hopeful that the FinTech Hub in Newtown, Kolkata, surrounded as it is by financial institutions, surrounded as it is by educational institutions, will become a real future growth point for the whole state and for the whole country. And I will end by saying that very lately, Honorable Chief Minister has announced on the floor of the Assembly that there will be a Bengal Silicon Hub in Newtown, Kolkata. Already 100-acre plot of land has been earmarked, and the focus will be on emerging technologies, innovation, and research and development in areas we are very strong at. So I am very hopeful, the government is very hopeful that today or tomorrow for fintech and blockchain, Bengal will emerge as a nodal point for further development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sen, for outlining the state government's plan to encourage blockchain, use of blockchain and technology. Is also very refreshingly different, because many years back we used to talk about wing big industries coming to Bengal and all, but now you spoke about encouraging startups, very different. And if I remove your name, if people don't know who is talking and which geography, people might think that's one state government official in Telangana and Hyderabad is speaking, not a Bengal IAS. So very different. Give him a big hand for his plan and all. So once again, I just give you a contrarian view that many of us believe that machine can do everything. Machine will do everything. We don't need human beings. We'll lose our job. In fact, who's responsible for this? The first Terminator movie in 1980s. I'm sure many of you have seen that. That was the first time it says we spoke about something called sentient machine which could do everything. Even before that, in 1957, US Navy developed an artificial intelligence called Perceptron. And when they had a press conference, New York Times wrote that US Navy expected this machine will walk, talk, see and write. This is 1957. And now we are talking about 2018, nothing has happened. So always it's a bit of overhyped. So machine cannot do everything, and even if machine takes away some jobs, actually because of this there are new jobs also are being created. I'll give you 3 examples. How this in the new environment, when blockchain technology and robotics come, new jobs are created. This is done. All of you have heard of Mr. Tim Cook, who is an Apple CEO. In 2016, he tweeted saying that about 86 billion will be earned by 2017 by a new set of professionals called app developers, app developers. That job was not there a few years back. So that's the job new created. Similarly, the job of data scientists, the job of biostatisticians. We never heard of this. But as we progress, these are the new set of jobs are also being continuously created. Okay, so now I think all of us are waiting for to hear Mr. Bhaskar Pramanik. Again, he is sort of synonymous with technology in India. Former Microsoft chairman and now, of course, on the board of State Bank of India, India's largest lender and world's one of the top 50th banks. Mr. Pramanik, welcome for your keynote address.
Thank you so much. So first of all, I'd like to thank the Bengal Chamber of Commerce for being very persistent and insisting that I should be here. And I'm really glad that I came here. It gave me an opportunity to meet again with all of you here on the dais, but a lot more people whom I've known over my last 45 years. I was trying to figure out what should be the best approach. And I thought that, talking about technology would not perhaps be the best use of your time and also my time. And what I thought I'd do today is to divide my speech into really 3 sections. The first is really to talk about banking. I've been on the board of SBI now for about 9 months, and I can tell you it's been a fascinating experience. I moved from what I think is the most unregulated industry to the most regulated industry, and into what I would consider the perfect storm. All of you just have to pick up any financial newspaper and you can understand the kind of crisis which banks are going through at the present moment. All for the good. It means that we're going to have a bright future ahead, but it's very tumultuous times. So I wanted to share my experiences and what I've learned during these last 9 months. And the reason I'm going to do that is because a lot of what has happened could perhaps have been avoided if there were better use of technology. Now again, technology is becoming something which should not really be what engineers and technologists and science students should be familiar with. Frankly, technology is something which every CXO, every CEO, every chairman should be aware of. Not in terms of the intricacies with which it works, but for them to be able to imagine how the business should be run. And I was just sharing with Mr. Ghosh that I've had the opportunity to spend some time with Aditya Puri, I've had spent some time with Uday Kotak, with Chanda Kocha, with Chika Sharma, and also with Arundhati from the State Bank of India. And each one of them has an appreciation of technology, not from the perspective of what that technology is and, and how, fashionable it is to adopt that technology, but from the perspective of what they want to do for their customers. And what I'd like to do is to share with you 3 tips in terms of how you should look at technology, not necessarily for financial services or the banking industry, but across any industry. And I'll share that with you. And then finally, I'll dive into blockchain. There's a lot of myths about blockchain. There's a lot of great things which you can do with it. There's a lot which is happening here in India, and I'll share some of that with you. But I also want to talk about when you should not use blockchain. Okay, so I think it's important to understand that. So let's start with the banking industry and what I've learned. So if you think about banks today, they haven't revolved very much beyond the money lender in a village. The difference, however, is that you have regulators, you have global markets, you have lots of intermediaries, and you have governments which are also involved, especially if you happen to be a public sector bank. In fact, State Bank of India is run by the SBI Act, which is an act of parliament. So SBI has actually got multiple bosses who tell them what they have to do or what they can do or what they can't do. So banking has become a lot more complex, but the basic principle is the same in terms of how the business is managed and run. So I believe that fundamentally that has to change, and technology can help change that. What I appreciate about what Mr. Chandan Ghosh has done is that he's taken his clientele, which used to be the rural people, and he's given them hope. He has financially empowered them, and to me that is the role of bank. So to me, State Bank of India is not about creating financial products, nor is it about making profits on a quarterly basis or return on assets. Their basic vision as a company should be to financially empower every individual and every organization in India. That's their mission, and that's their vision. And then they need to figure out how they're going to about doing it. Now they've done, State Bank has actually done a reasonably good job. And let me just give you some statistics. They have over 400 million customers or accounts. Now just think about it, that is more than Airtel plus Reliance put together in terms of subscribers. Don't think of them as accounts, think of them as subscribers. Now just imagine what would happen if you could delight those accounts of subscribers so that they use SBI not just twice in a month or thrice in a month, but they're constantly interacting with SBI for all its financial products and services to empower them for everything they do. Whether you're a housewife, whether you're a small and medium enterprise, how can you interact? Now that's the dream, that's the goal, that's where technology can help. The second thing about SBI is its reach. It's got 50,000 branches. It's got 25,000 branches, 50,000 ATMs, and it's got 650,000 point of sale terminals. It operates not just in India, but something like about 20 or 30 countries across the globe. So therefore it's massive. It's got multiple channels. And if you look at its balance sheet, it's 1/4 of India's GDP. It's huge. When I joined this company, I had a big problem because, everything, the unit of measurement is lakh crores. The unit of measurement is a lakh crore. It's nothing smaller than that. Every number there on the balance sheet says on top lakh crores. Now, it's in rupees. So it's much smaller than my previous company. I mean, Microsoft was a $100 billion company, and its market cap is $733 billion. It's the third most valuable company in the world today. But the point is that if you look at the size, the reach, and the transaction intensity of the State Bank, it's huge. So this is where technology has to play an important role. But technology, for technology's sake, is of not much use, and therefore it's important for SBI as well as other banks to focus on what are their priorities. And if I look at the banking industry today, I would believe that the top 4 priorities for any bank would be: number 1, risk management. Excuse me. Risk management, credit and risk management is number 1. And you can understand why it's important, because if you look at all the challenges which the banking industry is facing today, it's really basically because of the wrong decisions which were taken close to 10 years ago in terms of the loans which were provided. It's a lot more than that. It's basically also got to do with government policy. It's got to do with a whole bunch of things which have happened in terms of auctions, prices which were paid, and that's resulted in this kind of a mess. But credit and risk management going forward is going to become important. I really thank Raghuram Rajan. When we think of Raghuram Rajan as the governor of the RBI, we always think of him as the guy who solved inflation in India, and who refused to reduce the interest rates because he was worried about inflation. Well, we should give him credit for this new policy of the RBI, which is focusing not on the profitability, auditing banks for profitability, but for risk management. And they're doing a phenomenal job, and this is going to bring about a huge change, not just in the banking system, but also industry. Industry in the past always used to believe that if I failed, I would go back, do another deal with the bank, get them to take a haircut, and go back and reinvest. And I think thanks to the government, the DFS and RBI and the banking system, which has now said no more, is that going to happen. But going forward, what do we do that we don't have those problems? And technology can play a big role. The second is in terms of growth. How are we going to grow the business? Because you've seen the growth figures. Consumer lending is growing at a massive pace. But if you look at the enterprise or the commercial, it's not growing at that pace. And therefore, that's a big concern for bankers, especially like SBI, who are lending to enterprise customers. And then finally, you also look at the net interest margins, they are also declining. So there has to be other ways by which you can charge customers for services which are of great value to them. And then the third area would really be in what I would call looking at the P&L of the companies, because if you look at banks, there's lots of scope for further efficiency, for cost reduction, and I think that they are looking at how they can make that happen. And finally, the fourth, there's many others. There's human capital, there's asset management, but I don't want to cover those. But the fourth one, I think which is really concerning a lot of banks, is the structure of the banking industry, which is because now there's so many different players. So you've got the traditional banks, which are highly regulated. Then you've got the NBFCs, which are regulated to some extent. Then we've heard about fintechs. And fintechs are interesting because fintechs, what they do is that they go and look at the value chain, and find out where in that value chain there is the maximum profit and where there is maximum customer dissatisfaction, and that's where they apply technology. Now you can ask yourself this question, why don't the large banks do that? They're starting to apply that. They're looking for customer dissatisfaction, and then they're going and finding out how they can solve that before somebody else takes that business. So fintechs are there. Then you start looking at venture capitalists. The banking industry has never, ever given money to startups. Why? Because they still work on the principle that they need a physical collateral. And startups are not about physical collateral, they're about IP, intellectual property. Now this is not just unique to India, this happened in the United States. And that's why VCs came to the fore. And now that same thing is repeating here. So is there a way that banks can start lending to software companies, to technology companies, to IP? And it's not necessarily software, it could be pharmaceutical, it could be in many new areas. If you look at the US economy, it is growing because of the industries, the knowledge-based industries. And if banks can't fund those, then who will? Then you'll create another set of people who will actually do that, like the VCs. And then finally, there's another set of companies which are into what was traditionally being done by banks, and that is private equity. Because now with all these stressed companies, these private equity companies are actually buying into that, and they're actually doing, investing in all that. So I've been told that I have only 3 minutes left, and I've not even started talking about blockchain. So I think, this is the structure of industry. Private equity banks are not allowed to do that. In fact, private equity companies borrow from the banks and then go and give it to reconstruct the company. And then once the company is constructed, they sell it and they make more money than the banks actually do. So that's the other priority. And again, how can technology be used to do that? So one of the things which I wanted to share with you as a tip is that basically, technology can only do 3 things. And you need to understand what those 3 things are and define them with much greater clarity. Number 1 is about improving customer satisfaction, customer outcomes. Number 2 is about risk mitigation. And number 3 is about cost reduction. This is typically what anything you want to do in terms of outcomes can be classified under. In most banks, IT projects are focused on 4 areas. It's about empowering your employees, engaging with your customers, optimizing your business or transforming business. Empowering employees is about productivity, analytics for better decision making, mobility, virtual reality, augmented reality for training. Engaging with customers is simplifying loan application, chatbots, internet and digital banking, CRM. Optimizing business is about CBS integration, data warehousing, cybersecurity, loan management. And transforming business is digital banking. State Bank has an application called YONO. You only need 1 application. Trade finance using blockchain. This is all about creating new customers and also about creating new and marketing new products. Now you also have to understand that technology, the challenge is that you appropriate use of technology to solve the problem you want to solve for. If you have a pressing problem for today, please do not use future technology. Please use today's technology. It takes a long time to use future technology to solve today's problem. If you've got a problem for tomorrow, like growth, you should still use today's technology. It's only when you want to look at transformation, then you should look at future technology, because future technology can help you, but you have to change your business model. Otherwise, you won't get the benefit. So let's talk about a little bit about blockchain, and I'll try and be as brief as about that. Blockchain is the technology which can be used for reducing risk and improving customer outcomes in many areas of business, including the financial services. At its core, blockchain is a secure, shared, distributed ledger. It has a new shared data structure where banks can record transactions and work together to validate updates. Smart contracts act as a shared tool to govern changes to the underlying ledger in accordance to pre-agreed rules or terms. This concept of a distributed ledger and blockchain was invented by the people who invented the Bitcoin. It is what is called a permissionless blockchain. What we use in industry because of the underlying regulatory requirements and contracts is called the permission-led blockchain. Even today, if you look at Bitcoins and mining, the speed at which you can operate blockchains is only 7 transactions per minute, which is not possible, which cannot work in normal trade, finance, or any other business applications. You need transaction speeds much larger. This is one of the limiting factors. So if you look at what blockchain is not, number one is it's not a single thing. So don't look at blockchain and say it's a piece of technology, I can buy it, I can license it, and I can put it in. Blockchain is actually an interesting mix of technologies. It includes hash chain linked blocks, distributed computing, consensus algorithms, encryption, and more. So be careful when you decide that you want to go into blockchain. It's not something which is very simple. Another common misconception in the blockchain is it's not another form of distributed or encrypted database. It is not that. So therefore, a lot of people believe that being a distributed ledger, which everybody has a copy of, and it's a shared database, then everything is okay. That's exactly what it not is. In fact, you can solve a distributed database problem much more simply with current technology. Now, the financial services industry is fundamentally about facilitating the trusted exchange of value between multiple untrusting parties. Brokering that trust is an enormous responsibility and carries significant risk, which is why the industry has becoming increasingly reliant on costly intermediaries, manual processes, and error-prone reconciliations. So if you think about what happened in the Nirav Modi case, this is exactly what has happened. The Nirav Modi case is also interesting because if it had been a completely manual system with no SWIFT involvement, they most probably would have caught it. But having this hybrid where something is computerized and something is not, my belief is worse than if you didn't have anything at all. So, can I all right, so. So blockchain, can actually solve this, and I'm surprised that SWIFT hasn't introduced it already, because blockchain would actually have got it, a completely automated system where all the contracts and all the checks and balances and security would have been in place. So one other thing about blockchain is that blockchain adds accountability, reliability, and universal transparency. And on the internet, it is the only technology which has a payment layer. And that is critical because most of the time you're going to use blockchain is when there are some form of payments required. So I just wanted to end off, I have a lot more, but since I've been told to cut it short, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the challenges. And one of the challenges of blockchain technology requires an understanding at a fundamental level of all aspects of security, law, value exchange, decentralized governance, process, and commercial architecture. It therefore implies that traditional lines of business and organizational silos can no longer operate under the historical structures. This is one of the reasons that Gartner recently published a document which basically said that very few companies that only 1% of CIOs indicated any kind of blockchain adoption within their organization, and only 8% of CIOs were in short-term planning or active experimentation with blockchain. Now, SBI has been in the forefront in experimenting with blockchain technologies, and they have at least about 5 or 6 different projects which are ongoing. One of them is in coalition with a number of other different banks. So there's a lot more which I can share with you about some of the work they're doing, but I think with the paucity of time, I won't be able to. Okay.
Sorry, sir. Actually, we could have heard. I would request Mr. Basu, who's that, Mr. Anna Basu, can you just get this, his speech, can it be distributed after this? So, that will be a nice thing to do that. I'm sorry, we are sincere apology.
So I just want to close with one line. I strongly believe that banks' charter should change. They should be focused on empowering the individuals and the organization. The key word is empowerment. And all technology, when you look at blockchain, look at it from the perspective of who you are empowering and how are you going to do it differently from what is done today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pramanik. Thank you for going beyond blockchain and giving us the larger landscape of Indian banking scenario, what's happening. And as I've requested Mr. Arnab Basu, chairperson of the IT committee, to distribute his speech so that everybody can have a thing. We wish we would have, could have heard him for a longer time. Unfortunately, our sincere apology. And I am also skipping my anecdote. I am not going for that. Straight away asking Mr. Ambarish Dasgupta for his special address. It can be, he can distribute the hard copy, here.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My humble greetings to the dignitaries on the stage. I thank Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industries for giving me a slot, but despite my fervent request of allowing me to speak on blockchain and fintech, Bengal Chamber felt that my wisdom does not qualify. And therefore they gave me a slot definitely, but they gave me a slot on a completely different topic. And therefore you may have to bear with me for 10 more minutes for speaking on a subject which possibly is not directly related to the blockchain or fintech, but has some indirect connects though. Having said so, I must also say that the topic is extremely contextual. I mean, the topic that I have been given today, Bengal's potentialities for the ASEAN countries and the digital thing in the ASEAN countries, has an extremely contextual relevance to the today's world. And why so? I mean, as everybody of you must have been watching the news yesterday on the television or even before that about the US sanctioning on the Iran. And there are like that multiple happenings. So it seems like today in this world, the confluence of multiple unpredictable happenings being driven by multiple unpredictable personalities who are now controlling the world, it's making the whole world at this time a very high-pitched dramatic movie with twists and turns at every day. So from an imposition of a tariff to an imposition of a sanction to the showering of bullets on a nation. So it looks like a very high-pitched dramatic movie which can take a twist or a turn at any time. In fact, I think that the readership or the viewership of the whole world happenings today is possibly much more than even in our local happenings of a Panchayat election or a Karnataka state election, because it's so interesting today to see that what these unpredictable characters in the world will be up to next. While the world moves through these kinds of journeys, the business, the economy, the trading, the prosperity of the people cannot of course wait, because we still have to prosper. We still have to do our work, we still have to produce our goods, we still have to do our business. It has to continue. So therefore there is a role which the economists will still have to play. There is a role which the businesses will still have to play and have to chart out a path amidst these turbulences which the world today goes through. In this context, I must appreciate that the Bengal Chamber for the last 1 year or 1.5 years has been extremely focused, aligning to the global happenings, to the studying diligently of the ASEAN and the SAARC nations' economy. And let me also say that while this has been going on for the last 1 year, the entire thing actually took a turn. The attention got diverted towards these ASEAN countries and to the SAARC nations or Far East countries. In the 2017 beginning, when we first heard about these TPP and the withdrawal of the US from the TPP, and then there is the Trans-Pacific Pact, and thereafter redefinition of the TPP, the China wanting to say that we will be redefining the TPP, or then we started to hear about multiple other trade agreements coming into picture to make the ASEAN economy really prosper as a bloc. Also at this point in time, there were reports published from World Bank, a subject called global value chain. In 2017-16, they published one in 16, they published one in 17. It was also pretty contextual and to some extent coincidental, while the movement was happening to the ASEAN economy, that they published a report like that where they mentioned that there are a cluster of countries, a huge block of countries, which are not actually at the point of innovation of a product. I don't mean IT product, I mean product like a car or any other consumables or any other thing. Or they are not even at the point of consuming of that product. But these countries, they do not innovate and they do not consume also. There is a huge number of countries, but they play a very important role within the path that traverses from the point of innovation to the point of consumption. And therefore they said that the GDP of the world, which we consider as the collection of the GDPs, of the aggregation of the GDPs of the countries, is actually to some extent, if not misleading, but an incomplete leading information about a country's contribution to the world's economy. And why did they say so? Because they felt that these countries who are playing a role in this entire global value chain may not be having a significant proportion of GDP compared to the world's GDP or a percentage of the world's GDP. But the value addition that these countries are doing in one product, if they suddenly, due to the poverty or any political happening, crumble, then the entire value chain of that product will crumble, like a major car or any other major consumable or a major medicine. And if that happens suddenly, then this will be a huge impact on the GDP as well. So therefore, the GDPs of the country is always not giving the right information. It is the value addition that these countries are doing. And in that report, they also mentioned, it is observed that the emerging economies, both from the African side or the LATAM, and particularly on the ASEAN economy, that the majorly, which we all know, are playing a very heavy role as a cluster in these entire, not so much contributing to the GDP, but contributing to the gross value addition of the world. And in that, there was an interesting observation also. The observation was that though we are seeing many countries playing a role here, but there is a propensity or a tendency of some countries in that cluster to gradually fall behind and not to play a very significant role anymore in that value chain, and increasingly they may get marginalized. The reason that was given was that these countries, while they are playing on the cost of their skills or on the cost of their production, lessening it and therefore playing an important role in that, they are also suffering from a major non-tariff barrier. And this non-tariff barrier was coming from the inefficiency of the production, inefficiency of the logistical handling, and inefficiency due to the bureaucratic procedures of, as Mr. Shane also mentioned, clearances, the custom formalities, and the very other red tapeism in those countries. And therefore they felt that it is important that these countries play a significant role in enhancing their production efficiency, reducing their non-tariff barrier, and bringing more predictability into the non-tariff barrier costs. At this point, when Bengal Chamber and my organization also being aligned to that kind of a thing, since we work in the strategy space and more on the international expansion policy, we met many representatives of these countries, Vietnam, Malaysia, Cambodia, sent delegations, teams to those countries also, and figured out that while the report says something, but sometimes we have a dismissive attitude about the report also saying that those are all theoretical reports produced by these regulatory bodies. But interestingly, when we started meeting these countries' representatives, by being there or by talking to the consulates or those companies originating from there, we figured out that they are completely echoing that sentiment. They are saying that since there is an opportunity that has come to us right now to grasp the economic leading position, we just do not want to lose it. And therefore, we just want to release the combinatorial effect of the entire technology. The cloud, the mobility, the Industry 4.0, the AI, the blockchain, everything that is available to really leapfrog into a state where our efficiency cannot be questioned, where our cost of production cannot be questioned, and where we are extremely sustainable in maintaining this. And they also mentioned we do not have skills. We just do not have skills, because if we really want to now produce this product, if we really want to produce architects or designers or developers to take us into this Industry 4.0 or blockchain, how to streamline our cross-border agreements, how to make our preferential trade agreements being impacted through, we do not have those skills. And therefore, we are also not wanting to depend so much on the Western front because of the situations and the unpredictability factors, also not so much on the Middle Eastern organizations who may be also well advanced in technology. And therefore, we would therefore like to have something coming up in this part of the world, and preferably India, having these skills, having this potential, having served the world with this kind of technology, mainly to the Western world but not to us, and can therefore India play a very big role in moving this ASEAN absorption of the technology up. At this point in time, there was a Forrester report which also published, and I'm not getting into the details, but that corroborated the fact that what kind of growth these 13, 14 countries will be having in an IT consumption. Like 5 to 8% of growth, mind-boggling number of like some $268 billion of consumption, justifying the amount of market which exists there, and that market is crying because of the lack of skills, and the market wants some nearby, in the close vicinity, some kind of a delivery center, development center, some skill sets and something coming up very quickly. We recently, Mr. Ghosh led a team to Bangladesh also. The same situation out there, though Bangladesh did not feature in that study that they did about these ASEAN countries, but it's no different. I mean, maybe much lesser in volume, but the need was like all the banks really asking for the entire automation that the bank can have, but the Bangladesh banks or the Bangladesh skills do not really give them that conviction. They want something to happen close by. And when we analyze the situation, and the Bengal Chamber also analyzed the situation because they did it as a project of an Act East, and they figured out, and they focused on the IT part of that Act East with the linkages and analyzed the various trade agreements and analyzed the positional advantage and the multiple things. They figured out that though the entire east coast of ours is conducive to produce that, but more so in Bengal because of multiple reasons. Our cultural proximity, our geographical proximity, our habits, our practices is very similar than really taking it from the west coast or from other states into the east coast. And therefore, there was a strong need for a Bengal to establish itself, maybe jointly with Bangladesh, to cater to this entire ASEAN side. And therefore, when we discussed this, and the government also, that the formation of the joint ventures with these ASEAN countries company, the formation of a training institutes here, the CIO's workshop, move and penetrate and deepen our position into these ASEAN countries is what we found out would be extremely beneficial for the Bengal to flourish as a Bengal Silicon Valley with a focus on this ASEAN. So at the end, because I've been told that I have to end my presentation, I may also say that at least for the Bengalis out here who know that yesterday it was Pochishe Boishakh, so Rabindranath's birthday, so I think it may not be wrong to remember him, in this context also, though it may sound surprising that how a digital and blockchain can bring Rabindranath here. In 1916, when he first made his visit to the Japan, after that, of course, he made 4 or 5 visits, and he wrote this book, these letters and anecdotes of his Japan Bengali, which you all know, Japan Jatri Diary. So he wrote in that. He was the gentleman, the first one, who actually proposed to the Japan to have this pan-Asian movement. He, of course, did not have digital in mind at that time, but he felt that because of our cultural, our quietness, our sublimity, our patience, our cultural heritage, our passion for the art, he felt that we should not be solely moving to the Western imperialism, and we should be having a pan-Asian movement coming up. And maybe 102 years later, Bengal Chamber is paying their homage to the Kavi Guru by having a digital pan-Asian movement coming up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dasgupta. Thank you, and my sincere apology to all the speakers for being rude and reminding you of the time. Unfortunately, we're just running out of time. So the last bit of a couple of minutes by Mr. Debashish Basu, Co-Chairperson, Bengal Chamber of Commerce, for giving the vote of thanks. But before that, I'm just tempted to spend 30 seconds. Now, all of us have been talking about big data, even though these 2 words have been not discussed this thing. But do you have any idea how big is the big data? I'm just talking about one report of IDC, it's a leading market intelligence firm. In 2014, it estimated big data is, at that year, 4.4 zettabytes, and it's doubling every year. And by 2020, that's 2 years down the line, we have 44 zettabytes. Now, what is a zettabyte? Any idea? 1 zettabyte is actually 1 trillion gigabytes. And what is one gigabyte? 1 gigabyte roughly is about 250 songs, 5 minutes each. So 250 songs multiplied by 5, that's 1 gigabyte. 1 trillion gigabyte makes 1 zettabyte, and by 2020 you will have 44 zettabytes. That's the big data analysis. Sir, your last few minutes thank you speech.
So as we come to the end of this inaugural session, ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to give the formal vote of thanks. It is with the support and cooperation of the stakeholders that every year we embark on the Business IT Conclave, which is the signature event of the IT Committee of Bengal Chamber and Commerce. This is the 9th edition, and given the topic, I think it is going to be exciting for the next couple of hours and the post-lunch sessions. Our heartfelt thanks goes to the Information Technology and Electronics Department, Government of West Bengal, for partnering with us in this endeavor. The Chamber's vision is to be a key partner to commerce, industry, academia, professionals, and the government. And by organizing such events, we provide the platform to explore the new or the next gen of technology innovations that's happening across the globe. And I think this event will generate enough excitement amongst the folks who are going to participate through the day. I would like to thank Mr. Debashish Sen, Additional Chief Secretary, Department of IT and Electronics, Government of West Bengal, for taking time from his busy schedule to be with us. And secondly, I would like to thank Mr. Bhaskar Pramanik for a very enriching lecture and bringing some very diverse perspectives. I would also like to thank Tamal Bandyopadhyay for anchoring this session. Interestingly, if we had a multi-user ledger here and blockchain, we would add up the time where what everybody used. Probably Tamal Bandyopadhyay used the maximum amount of time from all the speakers. Thank you, sir, for that. I would like to thank all the speakers and panelists for the subsequent sessions, whose contribution is going to add to the thought leadership and going to be the key essence for the event. Special thanks to our sponsors, I will call them out: SAP, Dell, Bandhan Bank, Infinity, Cisco, FIS, Vizertech. A program of this scale cannot be conducted without the help of our esteemed sponsors. Also like to thank CIO Club and Salt Lake Sector 5. Our thanks to the friends from the media. And last but not the least, for all our participants and audience present here, a forum or an event like this is never successful or complete without your support and active participation. We would like to conclude the opening session by presentation of tokens as appreciation from the chamber to some of the dignitaries on the dais. I would request Mr. C.S. Ghosh to present a token to Shri Debashish Sen, please. Arnab, could you please present a token to Mr. Pramanik, please? Thank you, sir. Thank you for being with us. With that, we'll conclude this session. I will request Angona, before we do a changeover, to take us through a few next steps before we do a formal changeover. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and have a great summit.
We'll request the dignitaries to please be on stage for a couple of minutes. From the IT committee, we plan to work on the verticals on which IT has major impact. Fintech is one such. In March, we organized Health Tech, and as a precursor to Health Tech, we organized Health Hack, which was an innovation competition in healthcare. We had around 30 entries. 8 finalists were chosen by our jury panel. There was an official tabulator, and today we'll be felicitating the 4 best performers or innovators and 1 student category. I'll request from among the student category, the best student category was fall safe device for elderly people. I'll request the team please come up to the dais. I'll request Mr. Ambarish Dasgupta and Mr. Pulak Chamaria, who's the director of Infinity Group, who has very kindly joined us today to please present the trophy and the certificates to the team. Infinity is a strong supporter of our IT-related activities, and a corporate, I know Infinity is a very strong supporter of entrepreneurship. So we requested Mr. Chamaria to please join us for this program. The second runner-up was a presentation on 3D for development. It was on prosthetics. I would request the team to please come up to the dais. And I will request Mr. Arnab Basu and Mr. Debashish Basu to please present the awards and the certificates. Actually, when we did the screening, we only went by the, not only by the team, but also but by the innovation itself. I will request the recipients to please introduce themselves. Can I have a mic here?
Hello, sir. Hello, everyone. I am Ankit Kumar Kormokar, and I am representing my team from FallSafe Device. And here is my friend.
My name is Kaushik Datta, and we have a whatever, I'm nervous.
Actually, while working with this project, we are just students, right? And the major problem we are facing while working is just the lack of fund. We cannot forward our work. So I am really want to appreciate, it would be very great if I get a helping hand from your side. Thank you.
Thank you. The team, which is the second runner-up, 3D for development, that is on prosthetic.
So I'll just announce the names: Gopal Mondol, Chetna Singh, Dilshad Begum, Riddhi Ranjan Dotto, and Shantanu Sengupta. Congratulations.
The first runner-up was an innovation on connected lightweight devices for examination of blood and urine. So may I request the team to please come up to the dais, and I'll request Mr. Chandrasekhar Ghosh and Mr. Tamal Bandyopadhyay to please present the awards and the certificates.
Yeah, this is Rajiv Mondal, Partho Chakraborty, Tanuja Chakraborty. In our absence, I think. Yeah.
And the winning team was portable olfactory diabetes detection device. So I would request the winners to please come up to the dais, and I'll request Mr. Bhaskar Pramanik and Mr. Debashish Sen to please present the awards.
Hena Roy and Tarun Kanti Ghosh, that's yourself, and Alokesh Ghosh. So congratulations to all of your team.
Thank you, everybody. We will move on to the next session.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We'll request for a group photograph, sir. The next session is the lead session, Landscape and Legal Modalities. It would be chaired by Mr. S. Radhakrishnan, former President of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We have Mr. Vivek Belgavi, Partner, India FS Tech and FinTech Leader, PwC. He will be speaking on mapping the expansion of FinTech with realistic demand of Indian financial infrastructure. We have Mr. Shobhik Das, Senior Solution Advisor, Evangelist for Digital Transformation SAP. He will speak on Da Vinci Code of Innovation with Intelligent ERP, Business with Purpose. Mr. Deeptiman Dasgupta and Mr. Debojyoti Das, who are the co-founders of Bengal Blockchain Believers. Mr. Xavier Kurian, Director Solutions and Alliances, Global Compute and Network India Dell. Blockchain, he will be speaking on blockchain, fintech and beyond. And we have with us Mr. Prashant Mali, cyber law expert, Bombay High Court, who will bring the legal perspective on legal aspects of smart contracts, cryptocurrencies and global trends. You are requested to please stay at your seats. There is no break in between the session, and as soon as the changeover is made, we'll be commencing the session. Thank you. So would request the chairperson and the speakers to please come and join us. Mr. S. Radhakrishnan, Mr. Vivek Belgavi, Mr. Shobhik Das, Mr. Deeptiman Dasgupta and Mr. Debojyoti Das, Mr. Xavier Kurian and Mr. Prashant Mali.